Friday for Seahawk fans, and this is Hawk Talk. Grab your cup of coffee and let's get rolling. Big shout out to Three Lions Pub. Last night we did the sports bar series at that location right there on Redmond Ridge. They were great. The interview is up on our YouTube now, so definitely check it out. And so shout out to them. Great food, great environment. I got to meet a lot of I got to meet a lot of nice people, not just from the bar, but of course, while we were setting up, people were wondering what we were doing. And so great experience. If you haven't been out to one of our sports bar locations, definitely do that. We do one each week. And so looking forward to next week as well. But check them out. Redmond Ridge, Three Lions Pub. Awesome spot. All right. So last week, we had the Cards, and everybody was pretty sure they were going to be able to beat the Cardinals. The Cardinals are a scrappy team, but they're not particularly good. They make the games interesting each week, but they're not necessarily, in real danger of winning, unless you're the Cowboys, I guess. And so it wasn't one with a ton of concern going in as far as the Hawks being able to pull it off. But that being said, it's not a team you can look past either, because they definitely didn't get the memo that they are supposed to be tanking. They have been competitive in every game. In fact, if you were betting, they had been covering the spread, the first 4 weeks of the year. So it's a team that you definitely had to take some pause for, take them seriously. That being said, the Hawks obviously come away with a win. They cover the spread. They win by 10. And the thing that's been really nice about the Seahawk team is the way that this defense has started coming along. Especially when you look at the beginning of the season, the defense really wasn't great. They were giving up yards, points. They were still able to win, right? Because the offense was able to do just enough. But the defense has progressively gotten better over the last, certainly over the last 3 games, where they're averaging, giving up 10 points a game. So it's nice to see this defense coming along. The offense is starting to struggle a little bit, and that's a little bit of a concern. But they were able to get just enough done as far as, getting the win here. They got the running game going early. Walker runs for 105 yards and 20 carries. So it was a solid outing, for the running game. With DK out, JSN and Bobo both stepped up, and, both of them had 4 catches apiece. JSN had 63 yards. Bobo had 61 yards. Both ended up with a touchdown. So they almost had identical stat lines. And so it was encouraging to see that even with one of our main receivers out, that we had enough pieces that you could really kind of get in there without skipping a beat. This week, I think Lockett's missing the game, so you're going to see a lot more of Bobo yet again. DK, I believe, is going to be back. So there is that. But, the biggest thing that worries me about this Seahawk team moving forward is there has become more turnovers each week. So the week prior against the Bengals, they threw a couple of interceptions. Now, that game feels a little bit like an outlier. Gino looked unsettled in that game, and there really wasn't a ton that was going right other than on the defensive side of the ball. They were able to get some stops, keep that game close, and there were opportunities for the Hawks to win that game. So then you move forward into the Cardinals game, and they end up with a couple of fumbles and a pick. And, so now in the last 2 games, there's 5 turnovers. That is a trend that has to go away if they want to remain competitive. But they have the Browns this week, and the Browns have a lot of missing pieces. So as good as they've been, I'm not too worried about this game. Of course, it's the throwback jersey game too, so that's cool if you're old enough like me to have seen them in those jerseys originally. There's a lot. There's a lot of things that are encouraging moving forward. And of course, when you look within the division, you have the Niners who have slid the last 2 games. There's a real good chance that they end up losing this week as well, just based on the guys that are out, the fact that Purdy isn't going to be playing, right? You have Darnold as the starter. Debo is still out. And, Williams is questionable, but it sounds like he's going to be out. And so all of a sudden, if the Hawks can pull off this game here and the Niners drop their game, it's entirely possible that the Seahawks take this division lead. And that is really encouraging for, obviously Hawks fans in general. But it's good to be in that position getting into the harder part of the schedule, because as you look further down the line, all of a sudden you still have the Cowboys, you have the Niners twice, you have the Eagles. So you have some stiff competition. You have the Rams again. And I mean, even though the Rams aren't necessarily a great team, they play the Seahawks really well, especially if you think back to week 1, where in the second half, after they lost tackles, they really beat up on the Hawks. So they have a 5 or 6 week window here coming up where they have some really tough competition. And so if they can get some wins here, especially if the Niners can drop a game here or there, then all of a sudden those Niners games matter a lot on whether or not you're not only getting into the playoffs, but potentially winning the division. So there's a lot to look at. But coming into this week in general, the biggest thing they need to be able to take care of is ball security. Again, just because 5 turnovers in the last 2 games is not ideal if you're going to try and make any kind of run moving forward. But that being said, let's get into some of these questions, and we can address some of them that are kind of funny. So if Bobo keeps playing the way he is, how do we get him more involved? Well, I mean, he's going to get more involved anyway, just because he's played really well. So they're going to scheme things and design things where he's going to be on the field. The other thing is DK and Tyler Lockett have both had games where they've missed last year and this year. So when you look at, last week's game against the Cardinals, he was out. You are likely not to see Lockett out there. And so, Bobo's, he gets those because, obviously DK is going to be back and JSN is there, but then you need that third receiver. And in this scenario, he's going to get those reps for sure. When they're back, then, obviously you filter them in however you can, but you also have to stick with the guys that, you've paid their Pro Bowl talents. You got to stick with the guys that are doing it for you week in, week out. So it's not a bad problem to have when you have a guy that is probably starter worthy on most other teams as your 4th option as a receiver. So I don't know that they can necessarily get him a ton more involved, but as guys get hurt and whatever, he fits right into that slot and, jumps in without skipping a beat. So having Bobo as that 4th option is a really nice thing as a Hawks fan. Excuse me. Do I really think that they trade DK? So here's the thing is, if you look at the game last week against the Cards, we didn't have any unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, drive killing 15-yarders. It was one of their least penalized games. There was 5. So there's things that point to it wouldn't be the worst thing ever. If they could get a 1 and a 2 or maybe 2 1s for him, because he's an elite athlete and crazy speed and all of those things are true. Obviously, he can make amazing catches. He's a huge target. There's so many things that you like about what DK can be. But the problem with what he does is, some of what I talked about last week is his total penalties each year have continued to go up, and now he's on pace for double-digit, penalties. And again, most of them are the drive-killing, bonehead type penalties. I don't mind an offensive pass interference or a hold or something like that. Those could get called on most plays. So when you do get burned on one, hey, that's football, right? That happens. But when it's after the whistle and it's taunting and unsportsmanlike conduct and those types of things, those are preventable. Those are mental mistakes. And over the course of his career, they've become more frequent. So it's not like this is, coaching will be able to, kind of work this out. Coaching hasn't been able to do that thus far. And, now you're 5 years in. And so do you think that it can be? And I don't know if the approach isn't good, or I'm not sure exactly what the disconnect is, but there's more of them each year. And, then he comes out and has that statement to, I think it was to the NFL Network, that I'm not going to change the way that I play. I'm not going to change my mindset. And it's not that you want him to change the way he plays. You just want him to be smart, right? I mean, the refs will let you beat up on a corner until the whistle blows, but when the whistle blows, you got to stop, right? If you keep going, that's where the laundry comes out and it becomes a whole thing. And then all of a sudden, instead of being 1st and 10, you're 1st and 25. And there's not a lot in the playbook for 1st and 25. And if you don't do anything on the first 1 or 2 plays, there really isn't much in the playbook for 3rd and 25. So it's it's a weird situation, because you'll watch him make a miraculous play and you're like, glad he's on our team, right? And then he'll turn right around and drop an easy pass and then get an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. And it's like, well, like, what are we doing here? You're an elite athlete. You have an amazing catch radius, but you're getting in your own way a lot of times. And so, if you were thinking of moving on from him, this would be that time, right? He's in the contract. He's still all of those things. So you could definitely get a 1 and a 2, or maybe 2 1s. And you have Tyler Lockett, JSN, Bobo, and you would end up with a couple of draft picks. So, I mean, it's not like the Seahawks are bad in the draft. They have absolutely crushed the draft the last couple of years, and, historically do fairly well in the draft overall. So if they were to move on from him, I don't know that it would hurt the team a ton. Again, because anytime the DK has not been in a game, they really haven't missed a beat so much. They don't have that flashy toy, so to speak, of we could burn you over the top, right? Because I mean, he's fast, so there's always that threat. But you don't throw a lot of those balls in any given game. Now, it's a great decoy, sure, but he doesn't even necessarily run a ton of those routes. So I mean, that's just not the way that the Seahawk offense is designed most of the time. So it's a complicated situation, because you want him to just be smart and stay on the team. But if he's going to continue to have situations where he's hurting the team each game, it's tough to win games if you're just giving drives away, right? Like if you're moving the ball a little bit and then you have it kill it and it moves you outside of field goal range or whatever, I mean, you're literally taking points off the board for something that is easily avoidable. So that being said, hopefully he can get right and not continue plays after the whistle, so that he can stay on the team, make a huge impact, and be the player you want him to be. So do I really think they trade him? Really depends on how much he changes his game, so to speak. If he can reel some of those bad decisions in, then no, I don't think they do. If he continues on the path he is, it would actually probably be pretty smart. What do I think of of Frank Clark coming back? I mean, that's a great pickup. One, I know Frank Clark liked being here, so he's familiar with the system. It's something he'll be able to step right into. And then also with Nwosu going down with the torn pec and needing surgery, you needed another pass rushing guy. And so bringing, Frank Clark back makes a ton of sense. I didn't see exactly what what his contract was, but I imagine it's probably a 1-year deal. But that being said, awesome to have him back in the building, and hopefully he can just step in without skipping a beat, and we can still have the defense that is trending up quite a bit. So that being said, I like that acquisition. I do kind of hope that they entertain bringing Fluker back. Again, with the amount of tackle issues that we've had, it would be nice to add another good tackle. And of course, Fluker is a good athlete. He spent a lot of time over the last couple of years getting his body right. A good buddy of mine who has raised the bar in right here in the Seattle area, actually. It's Raised the Bar. It's on Mercer Island. And JR is an awesome trainer. And so he was actually who helped Fluker get right back into football shape. So kudos to my buddy Jacob. And, hopefully they can bring Fluker in as well to help out, because I think that's also another contract that I think could be, a league minimum or close to it, because Fluker's at a spot in his career where, he's kind of on the edge of being in and out. So if he wants to stay in and get some good tape, that's probably where you end up with that league minimum type situation. And, so I hope they entertain it, but tough to say, right? All right. Do I like the throwback jerseys? Of course, because, like I said in the intro, I was old enough to see those in real time, right? So got to watch those in the Kingdom. It's awesome. In fact, I was reading an article earlier this morning that it sounds like they're going to add a second throwback game. There was only going to be the one, but it sounds like they're going to add the game against the Cowboys as a throwback game. So you'll get a second chance to see them. Obviously, they are putting them on this weekend as well against the Browns. So really excited to see that. If you didn't see any of the aerial footage of the of Lumen Field with the old logo field already laid out, definitely check it out. It's online. You just Google it. But it looks awesome. So super excited to see these throwbacks. Haven't bought a throwback jersey yet. I'm waiting for them to, calm down a little bit because they've been flying off the shelves, rightfully so. That being said, I do have an old Steve Largent jersey that I'm probably going to wear for the game this weekend. And, being a true retro support, right? So that being said, I do plan on picking up a, probably like a Diggs or a Woolen, maybe a Witherspoon throwback jersey. I think that'd be pretty cool. So, but yeah, no, I love the new throwbacks. They are awesome. And, I was a little sad that the grays were the ones that went away because I would have rather got rid of the action green. Not a huge fan of that jersey, but that being said, the throwbacks are very cool. All right. Am I surprised with how good Witherspoon is? There's kind of two parts to that. So yes and no. Am I surprised that he's good? No. I mean, they picked him, fifth overall, right? So I would hope that you're good. What I am surprised with is how good he's gotten as quickly as he's gotten. So just to rattle off some numbers here, just because it was interesting, is he is the highest graded pass rusher among corners, and he's the fifth rated in the NFL. So he has a pass rush grade of 92.2 from Football Focus, which is fifth in the league, which is crazy because if you think about it in that way, that is ahead of Bosa, that's ahead of Aaron Donald, that's ahead of Micah Parsons. So that's incredible to be able to have a corner that is better in the pass rush than guys that are lauded for exactly that ability. So that is very cool. Obviously, he's ranked number one as corners, but also ranked number one. He was a top graded corner just overall with a 88 and 88.5. So really impressed with the way Witherspoon has been playing. And of course, you still have Woolen on the other side who, is a problem if you're an opposing quarterback and you got Diggs in the back and of course Love. So I really like the defensive secondary that they have put together. It's not the Legion of Boom or anything, although I do like how much that, Witherspoon comes in to hit, right? He comes in and wants to blow a play up. He actually reminds me a little bit of kind of a Brandon Browner without the penalties, right? because Browner loved to come in and just hit people. Like that was absolutely a thing. And Witherspoon looks like he embodies that attitude of just coming downhill. If you have the ball, he's going to light you up. I love seeing that out of a defensive back. So yeah, that's very. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch for sure. All right. Oh, this is the one that I thought was funny. Okay, so we got. Do you think we should fire Clint Hurt or Shane Waldron? I mean, it's tough to want to fire your DC when you are giving up the least amount of yards over the last 3 games, the least amount of points over the last 3 games, and the most amount of sacks. They had 18 sacks over the last 3 games. So it's tough to feel like you need a change at the DC when your defense has really been coming around and not just improving, but going from one of the worst to one of the better defenses in the league. So, I mean, I don't know that you want to get rid of a guy that is starting to have that kind of turnaround. I mean, it just means that it's taken a little bit more time to get all the pieces in place. But now with everybody the way they are, this defense looks pretty good. So I don't think Clint Hurt is going to have any issue keeping his job. Shane Waldron, it's funny. I don't think he's going to end up with an issue either. And why I say that is they kept Darrell Bevell forever because, you're winning games, right? And at the end of the day, even if it seems like a sort of vanilla offense, which, Bevell had a lot of that. The only time Bevell seemed like he had real creative offense is when he had injured players. And it's funny because when you watched that, you'd become frustrated because you're like, oh, he actually knows how to scheme creative plays. Just when he had all of his stars, he basically just ran the same things. Like, this is what we're going to do. Stop it. And, in that era, people kind of couldn't. So it worked. And in this case, we're not seeing anything super creative. We are seeing some creative things as far as pass protection, though. So I can't be too mad at that, considering you had two of your tackles, your 2 starting tackles were injured for multiple weeks. One of them comes back. He's still not quite right. The other one is still out. Your drop off from your starting tackles to your second string tackles seemed to be a much larger step than it should have been. So he started running things where he's bringing tight ends to help block and, dual backs. And he's implementing a lot of things to help in protection. So although it may not necessarily look flashy going down the field, it's allowing the team to still go down the field. I think where he's getting so much, hate, so to speak, is the fact that the Hawks haven't been able to really finish drives. It's been a lot of field goals, not a lot of touchdowns. That'll become a problem if we are looking at it here in a couple of weeks. If they can't figure out how to start punching it in the end zone, you're not going to win against the Cowboys. You're not going to win against the Niners for sure. The Eagles won't be a fun experience. So that's one of those. On the offensive side, they're going to have to figure out how to scheme things a little bit differently so that they can get it into the end zone, because they've been able to move the ball, right? Like, they've been able to put up yards, total team yards. They're putting up over 300 yards a game. So, it's not like they're playing terribly. It's just one of those, they haven't been able to finish. And some of that is ill-timed, penalties or, stuff like that. It's actually one of the things that, I mentioned last week about the penalties for DK is, especially after his statement that I'm not going to change the way I play. It's like, well, yeah, but now refs are going to call it tighter because they know that not only do you know that you're doing these things, but you just don't care. And so they're going to call those tighter, which means you're probably going to see more of them. And so those are some of the things that I worry about, because those are also drive killing things near the end zone. So they've just kind of found ways to come up short in the red zone. Now, some of that you can credit to the other team's defense, but it's consistent enough that it is a worry. The other thing is they haven't been able to convert on third down great. Like it's been real inconsistent. Last week they were pretty solid, and the defense obviously got better as far as getting off the field. I think the Cardinals were 33% on third down. So there's things that are trending the right way, but there are elements of it that you need to see change quickly. And I don't think Shane Waldron is the issue there. Do I wish that we would see, different kind of play calling, flashier play calling, so to speak? Sure, right? Because as you're watching it, you want to see cool stuff. But you know what moves you down the field pretty consistently? Or 4 to 8 yard outs and seam routes and slants. And I mean, does it look pretty? No. Are they really high percentage completions? Of course. Does it move you down the field? Absolutely. Barbecues the clock too. So, I mean, as long as you're playing with a lead, that kind of offense works. If you're playing from behind, obviously now you have to stretch the field. You got to get a little bit away from the running game, not a ton, because otherwise it really hurts your ability to do play action. But yeah, I don't think that Waldron is going to be that big of an issue moving forward. This is one that I've gotten literally almost every week. At least a version of this question. Can we start Locke yet? Just why? Why would we do that? Geno has thrown four interceptions on the year, right? So I mean, it's not like he's out there having interception machine type numbers here, right? So I'm not sure why we're freaking out on Geno quite this much. He had a efficient day. He was threw for 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, right? 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio wins you a lot of games. And he had 113 passer rating. So, I mean, you can't really ask for much more out of what Geno is doing. He's athletic enough. When a play breaks down, he can generally extend a play or at least do something smart and throw it away, whatever. Is he going to throw a bad pass? Sure. Show me a quarterback that doesn't. I mean, there's some of them out there. So he has 4 on the season. Josh Allen had 4 in the first game. So I think we can reel in the crazy, I didn't like something Geno did for 5 seconds in a game. Let's get him out of there. He's playing efficient football. He's smart with the football. I don't see any reason why you would bring Locke in unless Geno gets hurt. But if he gets hurt, obviously, Pete likes Locke. And, he said that, I mean, you watched him in preseason. He looked good. But, that's preseason. And so that doesn't really equate to anything in real time on the football field during the season, because a lot of the guys you're playing against in the preseason aren't going to be playing, once the season hits. And, some of those players that did make the roster aren't on it anymore. So blocked out for a second there. But you can feel good about what you saw, but you can't really base anything on that. But again, if Geno gets hurt, sure. Yeah, give him a go. But if he doesn't, I've seen nothing out of Geno's gameplay to get him off of that spot as your starter. Plus, I mean, Locke was hurt, so they actually brought back their third string guy that was there through the preseason. They ended up cutting him for the 53-man roster. They did sign him, I think it was a week and a half ago, something like that. Maybe it's 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, Locke has been dealing with his own injuries. So, I don't know that you'd necessarily throw him out there right away anyway. But no, it is not time to move on from Geno. That makes literally no sense at all. All right. Oh, you may have answered this before, but what do I think of the Marshawn Lynch interview? So the Lynch interview, I imagine you're talking about the one with Shannon Sharp. If you haven't watched it, it is a good watch. Definitely go check that out. It's a longer episode. It's the, it's in the Club Shay Shay catalog there. But, it was good. It was actually insightful that some of the issues with Russ started much earlier than you would have thought. Like, as a fan, you looked at that situation and you you looked at it with, okay, as soon as Team 3 became a thing, there was more distraction, and he changed a little bit, right? But based on the interviews that have come out since then, and obviously, especially this particular one, it sounds like a lot of these issues were there really kind of from the beginning, right? Because I mean, it's not like the Super Bowl was years into his tenure in Seattle, right? It was the second year. The first year they get to the playoffs, they lose in Atlanta, if I remember right, and then the next year they get to they get to the Super Bowl and win, and then obviously the second Super Bowl they drop that one to the Patriots, but those were all early on. So if these issues had started all the way back then, that means that really there was kind of a disconnect in that locker room from the beginning, which kudos to Pete and the organization to be able to keep that under wraps, right? Because it's hard enough for these storylines to stay quiet anyway. So it was something as big as that, for it to take as long as it did to actually come out. Pretty impressive by the organization keeping that quiet. And then it also lets you know how much talent that team had, because if you didn't have a truly unified group, that means you're really laying in on the talent, because you're just not going to play as fluidly together. I mean, I guess on the plus side, it was offense versus defense instead of, part of your defensive unit was a problem. That rarely works out long term. But so yeah, it's a great interview. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. And it, like I said, it's a longer one. I think it was roughly an hour and a half, something like that. So I mean, it was good though. It was good. Definitely check that one out. Worth the watch. All right. And then, so one thing encouraging here, Kenny McIntosh is finally good to go, according to Pete, and could be available for this weekend. I haven't seen officially that he is able to play yet, but that would be good, especially just adding some depth to that running back room. So yeah, Kenny McIntosh, good to go. So he may finally get to see the field against Cleveland. So now we can move into our Cleveland game here. So the Browns come to town. It's going to be PJ Walker again, right? So Deshaun Watson is out. I can't imagine Browns fans are loving this contract at this point. He's either played bad or just not been able to play. So this Deshaun Watson contract may go down as one of the worst signings really in football history. So good on Deshaun taking some heat off of Russ, I guess. That being said, so they're going to have PJ Walker coming in. There's going to be a little bit more tape on Walker now, since he played basically all of last game. If you had Deshaun on your fantasy team like I did, you were really pretty bummed out about his start last week. He got you minus 0.8 and then left the game. So thanks to Deshaun for, killing my fantasy team last week. That one position is why I lost. So what do you do, right? But then they also have Kareem Hunt and Ford are both questionable going into this game. So even if they are able to play, it sounds like they're going to be kind of banged up getting in. So that'll be a spot where it's helpful for the Seattle defense in the way that, they've had trouble stopping the run. It has gotten better over time. But if you look at the last 3 games, neither of those teams have a great running game, right? It was the Giants who did nothing. You had the Bengals aren't exactly known for a great running game. And then, of course, the Cardinals, they don't do anything particularly well other than just play hard. So, it's something that kind of helps this Seattle defense if those guys aren't 100%. And then, it's if they can just continue to have another good game, right? So over the last 3 games, they've held teams to the fewest yards, 237 yards per game. They've had the fewest points, so they're averaging 10 points a game, and then They've had the most sacks in the league with 18. Now, obviously, some of those numbers are a little bit skewed because 11 of those, I think, came against the Giants, right? Because that was just that game had weird Madden numbers on defense. So I don't know how much you can lean into some of these numbers, but they exist nonetheless. So, but yeah, I mean, when you look at, they held the Bengals to 17, that's solid, right? That's a team that can score. The Giants, it was 3 points, but they haven't been able to do anything all season really. And then they held the Cards to 10, which, they're sort of trending down to that number. So again, I don't know how great these numbers are. Like on paper, they look great. The eye test, tough to say because those aren't necessarily great teams at doing some of those things. But that being said, if they can continue on this path and help us believe that they are that team, then it definitely has a much brighter future for this Seahawks team if this defense can be this way. Because then when the offense does make a mistake, it's going to happen. You feel confident that they can start getting teams off the field. It was one of the things that was tough to watch early on is they couldn't get off the field on third down. And so for that to be slowly trending into they're getting stops, they're getting off, obviously against the Cards, they were able to stop them flat on 3 different fourth down plays. So, there's a lot of things that I like out of the defensive side of the ball. And then if they can just clean up, some of the stuff on the offensive side of the ball, penalties, and of course, some of the protection and turning the ball over. Like if you throw an interception, I mean, it's frustrating, right? Because you probably just didn't see it. But when you lose fumbles, those are ones where you're like, man, like that one feels more preventable than an interception. So, because an interception a lot of times is a great play. Not to say that a fumble isn't, but you can protect yourself against a fumble a little bit better, right? It's that high and tight, 3 points of contact. I mean, so it's, I don't know. But going into this game, I want to see no turnovers if possible, and definitely need to see a little bit better play out of that offensive line. And then other than that, if you are playing Pick'em with us, obviously the picks for this week are locked from that game last night. But we are also starting to partner with BetUs, BetUS, and if you go to, it'll be in the link, or there'll be in the bio here on YouTube. If you're watching on Roku, then you will end up with a promo code probably next week. But that being said, you can go to my YouTube at football-talk, and the link will be there. You can get 125% of your initial bet, and then there's up to 30 risk-free bets if you use the link in the bio. So definitely check that out as well if you are into sports betting. And other than that, we will get you back to your Friday. Thanks for tuning in. Again, like, subscribe if you're here on YouTube or Spotify, and of course on Roku. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your Friday and the weekend.